Okay. Ugh. Okay, we're back. Make sure we got everything right, and I think we do. Audio works, video works. So, okay, here we go. Forgive the cat meowing in the background. She's a little upset today, so she's been yelling for the past 10 minutes. So if it comes across, that's what that is. Cat energy. Okay, so I'll put the chat up in a little while. I don't want to start with the chat today. I want to talk about power sets and different power sets that we have and why we don't embrace our power sets, why we lock them away, and why it becomes so difficult for a human, in a sense, to get back into those power sets, to kind of unearth them again. A lot of people think that it's kind of this, it's funny, I was watching Stranger Things, the new season of Stranger Things, and one of the big themes is, 11 doesn't have her powers. She's trying to find her powers again. I don't think anyone thinks that's a big spoiler. That's pretty much been seen and shown, right? She doesn't have her powers, she's trying to find it again. And anytime I feel called to watch anything, there's always a parallel for me in the sense of why I want to watch it and what it kind of brings forth for me, because everything we watch, everything we expose ourselves to is an activation. Now you're going to find you're going to be triggered by a lot of stuff in the beginning, and it is very overwhelming. I think I've talked on here before, like years ago, I couldn't watch a lot of violence. It was kind of, I saw how it impressed my consciousness. Now I can watch it, and it doesn't impress my consciousness like it used to, because my energy feels kind of bigger than that now. And it doesn't affect me like it used to affect me. I can watch it, kind of feels a little silly to watch it. Some of the stuff on, especially this, I was talking about how scary it was, and I'm like, this is just silly. It's not even scary. It just feels kind of silly. But that's just because I'm in a different place with what's impressing on me and what's not. And I don't have a lot of those fears that get triggered by horror or horror movies or like jump scares and stuff. Once you clear a certain amount of fear from your body, you don't have those surface fears anymore, so you don't get caught like that in a sense. You don't get scared like that. But there's a lot of this process where, and that's why people are attracted to scary movies, because it's clearing fear. It's a fun way to clear fear instead of going through something that was really, really scary in their actual waking life experience, right? So it's kind of a fun way for them to clear fear, but they don't know that's what they're doing. Because a lot of stuff we do in the beginning, we don't realize that's what we're doing. We figure it's all just something fun or something to escape into. That's why we get into everything we get into. Whether you're 6 or 60, it does not matter. Anything you get into, there's a reason you're into it. If you're heavy into a lot of sexual stuff, then you're clearing a lot of this, you're clearing a lot of sexual distortion energy. If you're heavy into the magical stuff, you're activating some of those magical realms. It doesn't really matter what it is, but you're never there for the purpose you think. And when I was watching, this season of Stranger Things, one theme is kind of the recurring theme in anyone who doesn't want to go back into a power set, right? And we're no different. And there's no coincidence that all of these superhero stories, all of these, what do they call them? I can't even think of the name, but the good guy turns bad boy, bad boy, hold on, I'm gonna get it. Bad guy turns good guy, but they're really not a good guy. They're kind of this quasi good guy. I can't think, there's a term for that character and I can't think of what it is. They're not really redeemed. They're still kind of bad. They're just not as terrible as they were, from a human perspective, to label something terrible. They're not as terrible as they were before. So, now the cat's just going to scream directly into the microphone. You gotta love cats. Anti-hero, that's what it is. So think about yourself as like an anti-hero, because there's a reason why everyone always catches into that theme, right? There's a reason why they always will kind of go into that theme. Don't cut off my computer. It's because it's in the collective conscious. It's a memory. It's it's a trigger. And it's there to trigger people. It's there so people will remember. But when you're unlocking these types of memories, you don't unlock them quickly. It's too traumatic in a sense. It's one reason why we lose our memories. The more we ascend our consciousness, we lose our human memories and we remember our ancient memories. But a lot of what's tied up in those ancient memories is an abuse of power. How powerful we were, how many superpowers we had, how we abused them. And that is a theme over and over and over again. And anytime I hear someone say to me, oh, I don't want to think I'm that powerful. Oh, I don't want to really believe I have that much power. It's that same theme playing out. They're afraid they're going to abuse their power again. And we did abuse our power. We sunk Atlantis. We have done so, don't even get, if you even get into the galactic wars, there's so many reasons why over time we suppress all those memories and we suppress all those power sets. And we have this sort of block that we can't be our most powerful selves. We can't embrace the power sets we have because we're going to abuse them again. And that's what kind of locks the door to everybody. Because you don't think you can kind of rise above that. You can't, in a sense, learn from that. If anyone's ever dreamed or been really attracted to any of the Atlantis timelines, if you live in the East Coast, that's very Atlantean energy. Florida's really strong Atlantean energy. A lot of people who I hear move to Florida, I'll know people and they'll go to Florida. I know they're going to be clearing a lot of their Atlantean timelines. And, we don't just have one, we had many. They're going to be clearing a lot of those reptilian timelines. It's almost like a lower power set timeline, but we were very powerful there. We have all the powers you can imagine. You read minds, you create whatever. If people would think it's like a magician today, right? We went into Merlin last time, but it's the same thing. You can create whatever you want to create. You can materialize whatever you want to materialize. You just have to believe you can do it. Now that belief has to be stronger than what's showing outside of you, because the outside world will show that it's not possible. Because that's what it was conditioned to do. That's what you built it to do. You built your outside world to say that's not possible. So you don't try to do it. Because there is that fear, and that's that human fear that if I go into this again, I am going to destroy everything all over again. Because we have done it so many times. Because we never had a balance in working through the distortions of those power sets, of those aspects of ourselves. Now, when you get into higher consciousness, when you get into embodying that consciousness, when you get into ascension timelines, when you get into ascending your consciousness and body, full body ascension, a lot of people call it that, oversoul consciousness, where you merge everything back into one, you have to work through those distortions of all those power sets. And you will find yourself for a while going back into the distortions of those power sets when they first start coming out. When all of a sudden you can see the future again, or what you're going to deem as the future. You'll later learn to understand it's just a different vibration. I'm seeing a different dimension. That's just not here yet. So it's not really a different timeline, even though it kind of feels like it's a different timeline. Because it's not here. Because our human's going to register whatever's not here is not real. It's not something else. It's another moment. Even though it's technically not another moment, it's a different frequency. But when we get into unlocking our power, no matter how it comes across first, I was very strong clairaudience in the beginning. I could just hear I could just hear energy in a sense, but I didn't hear it the way some people hear it. Some people hear tones, they hear frequencies, and that's just energy, right? And frequency, I would hear it like words. I would translate it into words. And I was getting these audio books all the time of whatever was going on around me, whether it be people, whether it be things that were not visible in your energy field. So clairaudience is probably one of the easier ones to start with. Some people start with different ones. They start with the precognition. They start with they can see all the invisible is now visible. It took me a while to get to that point where I could see that, but I still don't see it as a separate thing. I'll just see it here. I see an internal video than I do an external video. A lot of people I've worked with in the past have seen it as like an external video. like they would get a preview of different or different timelines. They would just kind of play in front of them like a movie. Mine was never kind of like that. Mine was just sort of like, I just knew, or I saw it. I know the answer right away. I knew that person's gonna have a part. That person's gonna be important. And not important, like more important than someone else, but that one plays an important step in my next timeline. You know, I'd always kind of say we kind of have business together. You know, like this person and I, we have something we're supposed to do together. I just might not know 100% what it is yet, but I know we have business together. But that person might not come back along for 2 or 3 years later. Or I've had people who disappear for 2 to 3 years and they come back in because now it's the right vibration and now it's the right time to kind of fulfill our contract, our agreement, what we had to do. But I normally know ahead of time when anyone's coming in. I know ahead of time when anyone's coming back. And I just kind of know everything ahead of time. But we all do. That's when we get into deja vu. We get into something that feels familiar. We get into twin flame energy because we already know. We just never want to acknowledge that we know it because we do have to unlock that part of us that is afraid to go into these power sets. Because when you do first go into your power sets, your creation power sets, the way you realize you've constructed your whole reality to keep you kind of trapped. You know, a lot of this season of Stranger Things is more about mind traps. You know, a lot of the stuff the girl goes through, it's, you know, in her mind, which, you know, I'm sure we already knew that before we started watching it. But it's the same thing with us. We look at our reality and think it's real. It's no more real than any reality you want to dream up. It's just in the physical. So you feel, okay, this one's real. My dream world's not real. Well, you can flip that and say, maybe my dream world's real and this one's not real. Which one do I really want to believe? When we start quantum jumping through different realities and we start raising our vibration and ending up in different realities, it's almost like you're on a different planet now. You kind of ascend your consciousness and you bring your body through different points along the way. And it's like you're landing on a different planet. And I try to look at it like that. I was walking this morning because I just finished up a jump of jumping a couple timelines. And I was like, I wonder who's in this timeline with me. I wonder what the air is like here. You know, is like, am I going to be coughing a lot? Is it going to be easier to breathe here? You just kind of have fun with it. You know, like what's going to go on here? Who's in this timeline with me? Who carried over from the other timelines? Who's just going to disappear? And what new people are going to be here? It's like a constant up leveling. It's like you're playing a video game and you're constantly just going to the next level, the next level, the next level. And you don't know, you know, do these power sets work here? Am I gonna get an upgrade in my power set? Normally we do when we go up. And then just like in video games, you get an upgrade in your power set. The more you increase the levels you're going through, you're gonna get an upgrade every time. So it's the same kind of thing here. There's a reason why all these things kind of parody our ascension process. It's not a coincidence that all these things parody our ascension process. They parody our process because they're supposed to activate that process for us. It's in the collective. That's what these people are supposed to do. These movies that come out, you know, Inception was another movie that kind of opened up the dream world to people, but they almost tried to weaponize it. That's why I never really cared that much for the movie, because I feel like they tried to weaponize the dream world, and the dream world is not fighting against you. You know, there's no way, no one can invade your dream world but you, because you're the only person there. You're the only person in your entire reality. Everyone else is just an aspect of you. They're like, everyone's a twin and everyone's a twin of you. And it's either a twin you like or a twin you don't like, but everyone is still an aspect of you. There's no one else here. And when we start really grasping that there is no one else here, just us, we've created the whole thing. We've shifted the whole thing. We've changed the whole thing. Our human has manipulated the whole thing to make it feel like it's one thing when it's really not. I used to title these in the old stream package I had, you know, we're going to leave the matrix behind. And I got so many people that would just pop into the streams wondering what that meant, right? Because matrix is like a keyword for people. Matrix is a word that everyone understands. And that movie was back in the 90s, I think. I think it was back in the 90s. But it was still a code. You know, it was like Reiki's a key code for people. The matrix, I feel, is a key code for people. There are different things that trigger people and make you look at things and really question what you're looking at. The Sixth Sense was another movie that kind of questioned what you're looking at. You know, what are you really seeing? And the big thing about the movie The Sixth Sense was your mind filled in the gaps of what was really going on. And if you went back and watched the movie again, which once you knew the ending of the movie, I'm assuming everyone knows that Bruce Willis was dead, right? This movie's like 30 years old. If you haven't watched that movie, I hate to spoil it for you, but he's dead at the end. And when you go back and watch that movie, you realize how your mind, your human mind, had filled in what you thought was going on. And now your human mind does the same thing here. In your current reality, your human mind's going to fill in what it's going to make an assumption of what it didn't see and fill in the rest of the story. Anytime you saw Bruce Willis sitting with a person, even if they were in complete silence, you assumed they had been talking, but we had just gotten there late, right? There had been this whole conversation, we'd missed it. We had just missed the parts where he was interacting with other people. We only saw him interacting with a little boy. We fill in the rest. We do the same thing here. We fill in the rest. You have to look at what consciousness are you filling it in from. Are you filling it in from your human consciousness? Or are you filling it in from your higher consciousness? Because that's going to make a big difference in the story you're telling and the story you're telling yourself. If we look at everything from a human consciousness, that is to keep us trapped in the fact that we don't really have any powers, that we really don't know what we're doing, and that we're insane to think we can do any of that stuff. And do you really want to? Do you really want to embrace that power set? Because when it does start coming through, we do corrupt it. We have to work through the distortions of that. And that's why now they come through slowly, because we have to unlock them a piece at a time. And even people who, some people just come in a little more connected. Children are always more connected. They kind of lull to sleep over time. You know, milk is one thing that kind of lulls them back to sleep. That's why we give them milk. You know, it's our human programming to give them milk, and it lulls them back to sleep. Kids are always more connected. They lose that over time, a majority of them, just like we did. So if you always go back to kind of what you were into when you were a kid, that's going to tie you into some of your stronger timelines and themes that are going to play out later, I feel. But some of your stronger ones, some people are really into, like, I knew a lot of children that are really into dinosaurs, are really into fish. They have that Neptunian energy, you know, that mermaid energy, that underwater Atlantis energy, when they're really into any aquatic life as children. It's like this really strong timelines they play in, but they probably wouldn't call them that. When you get into, you know, some people kids are really into pirates, so you get into that energy. And we've all been pirates. We've all stolen. We've all been kidnapped. We've all kidnapped people. We've done everything. Any existence you can dream, you've done 100 times over. This one you've done 100 times over. So there's really no surprise there. You just have locked off the ability. When I say you, I mean the collective, all of us. We lock off we lock off the sight because we don't want to see it. We don't want to remember. We don't want to remember all the things we did because we're so afraid we're going to do them again. And we're so afraid we're going to get into these timelines where we trigger this same stuff again to happen, and we destroy everything. When you get into a lot of people are really into the dragon energy, you know, and there's a part to that energy where it is kind of burning down your realities. And there's a distorted part in the beginning to that. It's a destructive part to that fiery dragon energy. But then once you work through that distortion of that energy and you get to the other side of that energy and you kind of purify it, it's a very calming energy. It's a powerful energy when you're in, like, you know, your dragon energy. But there is that distortion to it too. And you kind of saw that. They play with those themes in Game of Thrones quite a bit with the dragons, and whether, you know, what could start off as a pure power set and how destructive it could become. Because what you're going to find you're going to want to do when your power sets start to come through and you start to realize how much you can materialize, how much you can collapse, how much you can bring through the higher timelines, that there is an ego that comes with that. And then you want to share it with everybody. And when you know stuff about other people, or you dream stuff about other people, or you just kind of know stuff about other people, you want to share that. You know, you want to be the one because it makes you feel good. And then there's a part of the process where we have to feel good because we didn't feel special. So now we feel special because we can tap into all these things that other people have not regained the access to yet because they haven't wanted to do that yet. So then people come to you for that, right? And then you kind of act as this person who knows more than they do. And there's a distortion in that, because anytime you start looking at anyone that knows more than you do, then there's a distortion in that. There can be a teacher-student role in that for a while, but eventually that will become distorted because you can't stay with your teachers forever because it hampers you from going on to being what you need to be. That's why you find over time you kind of shift teachers quite a bit, or what you think is a teacher. And once you really transcend a majority of your human programming, you get more into guides and not teachers. Teacher is more of a human word. I will use it sometimes when I'm dealing with human people and their human aspects and their human ego, because it has a respect. They tie a respect to it. Whereas when I'm working with someone who's done more of the soul work, I come through as more of a guide to them because they're in a different place. And a teacher label there kind of will throw the whole thing off kilter. And eventually you even stop being their guide and you become equals in what your abilities are and what you have been able to accomplish, do with your reality. So we kind of work through all of that stuff, but people get very frustrated because it becomes in slowly, because the kind of the fail-safe we've almost built in is we cannot achieve more and more of our power sets until we've transformed the distortions from what we've already gained, right? It comes in slower. We don't want to remember all these things at one time. It would pop our little brains. It would be too much for us to see all the things we've done. That's why when you see people today and you see all the things that a human would label as a very tragic thing that happened, and you get to a spot in your process where none of that stuff phases you anymore. You understand why it's happening. You understand why it had to play out that way. You understand everyone was just playing a role, and there was another reality and another timeline where you played out that role too. But as a human, we want to judge what everyone else is doing. That's what we do. We want to focus more on the outer world. We never want to focus on the inner world. The inner world to the human is not visible. They completely ignore it. They kind of put it over to the side and they focus completely on the outer world, not understanding that you're creating the outer world because you're creating the outer world unconsciously because you're not looking at the inner world. So the outer world is going to get more and more distorted to push you inside eventually, because that's how we notice something is really screwed up. That's why things have to sometimes go all the way to the max. Sometimes my realities will go all the way to like a max of distortion, even if it's not even that big of a deal, maybe 2 years ago. And then it gets so distorted, so ridiculous, so out of whack because I'm clearing something. I'm still playing in a program, but now the program is a lot more detrimental than it was before. And I never really use that word. I really don't like that word detrimental. It makes it sound kind of gray, but it just gets more and more and more and more distorted. So you can see it, because if you can't see it that clearly, you can't clear it. So something that might have been a teeny bit 3 years ago and made something go a little wonky over here is now going to completely tear up my entire reality because it is so distorted to the vibration my body's at now. And it has to clear. But you don't even know it's running because it was running kind of under the radar, because it didn't seem that out of whack with this other frequency because it was closer to that frequency. But the higher we go in frequency, the more things become so out of whack. They scream at you, so you will deal with them. And that might not have been the case a couple of years ago. You're going to find that in possibly money situations, relationship situations, where you're living. It'll be very obvious when you're clearing a program because it screams at you so loud. It gets so distorted and you're like, what am I running? What am I running? And I'll always, and sometimes we have to voice it. What am I running? And a lot of times I've talked in here about, saying, okay, bring me this, bring me that. It's kind of the game we play with our universe, bring me this. I want to see that reality. How do I get to that reality? But there does become a point where I feel like you do that long enough and then you have to say, okay, now I'm done with this. You're still talking to the higher aspects of you. You're still talking to yourself, but you're just kind of doing it in a more power tone. Like, I'm done with this bullshit. Whatever this is, I need to see it. I need to clear it. We need to move on because I'm tired of looping back around to this, looping back around to this, looping back around to this, because the program is so deep. So a lot of times we think it's just because we haven't done enough, we haven't cleared enough. But anytime you have a story around it, that's your human ego trying to fill in the rest of the story. It's trying to fill in the parts it doesn't know, because it doesn't know that much. Look at the human your human programming, your human DNA. It's designed to do one thing, and that's create a wall between who you really are, the most authentic self, and all your ancient memories, all your power sets. You know, you go through the Egyptian timelines, the nobility timelines. You get really into purple when you're in the nobility timelines. It's just there to create a wall. It's a virus in the system, in a sense. You know, it's just there to create a boundary, but it was supposed to. It was supposed to do it. That's what it was designed to do. And as things start bleeding over, as that programming starts to go, you do remember more, you do see more, you have more capability to do more. And then we can have a program that holds back from that, because we don't want to go down the same road again. You know, we don't want to make the same mistake. And you'll see the same thing happening in the more mundane parts of your life. If you had a bad experience with this type of job or this type of with this company, you might not want to go back again because you think you're going to do it again. If you had a bad relationship, even in our human timelines we play out, and when we come over to a higher timeline, but we see some situations kind of coming back over, because relationships are the hardest thing you have to get through and master, in a sense, because you're dealing with someone else's consciousness and you're not the only one in the reality anymore that you have to try to align. So when you get into that, if you've always had this thing never works out, I don't really want to do it in this one, because you really kind of don't trust yourself to do it. No matter how conscious you become, you still don't trust yourself with that thing, whatever that thing is for you. And it's going to be different for everybody, whatever that thing is. And that thing, after a while, sort of starts becoming your block, because you don't want to go back into it. You don't want to lose yourself in that whole situation again. You don't want to give up the power set once you get the power sets back and you start increasing your power sets. But it's always going to be on a level of purity. You have to work through the distortions of each piece of it, or you don't get more. Because you only get more when you upgrade to the next level of the game. You don't get more setting at the same level, working through that programming of whatever you just got. It's kind of like when you're in a video game and you get a new power set, or you get a new whatever it is. You use it right away because you want to see what it can do. And then you're like, wait a minute, I want to get it back again because I wasted it. It's kind of similar. Just because you're so excited to play around with it, that you really don't know what you can do with it. But a lot of times you haven't mastered it enough to know what you're supposed to do with it. And that's part of it too. So you end up sort of just playing around with a lot of this stuff. And some people stay around in that playing phase for long, long periods of time. They can be in that playing phase for years and years and years. And a lot of people get lost in it and never really get out of it. They'll stay in that phase of maybe, being maybe some type of metaphysical fortune teller. I don't really like the word fortune teller, but a lot of times you'll see it kind of used in that way, because there is an access. And as I said earlier, some people have more access than others, but anyone you go to assist with this, they can only read what they have an access to, which means they can only read the frequency they're at. They can't go past that frequency. So they can only tap into a timeline of the frequency they can read. Now, they have a similar frequency to you, or you wouldn't have been drawn to them, right? But they can only tap into that frequency of that timeline for you. They're not going to tap into a different frequency of a different timeline, because they have not achieved that in themselves to see it. They can't see all of them. The cards can't lay out all of them. And they don't have the sight for all of them. Unless they've achieved the sight for all of them. But if they have, I would say most of them will still not be playing on a lot of that stuff. Because when you tell someone their future, there is a power set of kind of locking someone into that. Even though there's a zillion different ones. There's a zillion different paths to go on, a zillion different people you're going to meet. Do some of the energies bleed over? Yeah, it's like parallel dimensions. It's you might have one reality where someone says, okay, you're going to be in a relationship with this person, but you upgrade a frequency, upgrade 3 or 4 frequencies, and all of a sudden you meet someone kind of similar, but you're just friends. But it never was this whole other thing that was supposed to happen. That never happened. And you knew it wasn't going to happen. It was always funny. Anytime I would go to anyone to read cards, and I used to do that years ago, I could always tell it wasn't going to happen. Like I knew what I was hearing was not a reality I was going to participate in, because we do choose what we participate in. Now, when you're in your human realities and you're unconsciously choosing what's coming forward for you, you don't have your choice. You give your choice away because we don't trust ourselves with the choice, right? So we just let someone else do it, which is really just higher aspects of ourselves doing it. But a lot of times it's not very kind to what it's going to show you, and it's not very kind to what it's going to give you, because it's trying to push you past that. And it's not going to push you past that if you don't get any experience that is, or what would be deemed as heavier than another one, right? Or more human traumatic than another one. It's not going to give you those, because this whole point is to get you to bust the wall down in between your human self and your master self. You have to be able to bust through that. And you have to become the master of your reality. You have to become your own everything, where there's no one else. You have all the power sets to do what you need to do. You can, see across space and time, in a sense, which is something else I'll say sometimes. It's like, I should be able to do this. I can see across space and time. Why can't I figure this one out, But it's always because there's something else in the way. There's a human program in the way, and it might take weeks to clear it. It might take months to clear it. A lot of these, it can take years to clear them. Years and years and years, because they're so deep. And anytime the collective clears a part of that program too, you're going to go through it again. It might not be as extreme, but you're going to go through it again, because you're going to have part of you tied to that collective till the collective clears it. That's why it's so important for the collectives to move along. And even though a lot of people would say they don't move along as quickly as you would like them to move along, they are progressing just like we progressed. But for a lot of us, it took really things to move us along. It took a lot of extreme things for the wall to start to implode. And eventually the wall does implode. It implodes for everyone, whether it implodes through a physical death, in a sense, and they decide they're going to ascend their consciousness somewhere else, or you eventually get to a point where none of the outside world makes sense anymore, and you start focusing on your inner world. And you take the outer world and you kind of put it over here. Whereas when you were in your human consciousness, the outer world was more important and the inner world was kind of invisible. You didn't see it. Now it becomes, you flip it. Now your outer world is invisible, in a sense. You don't really see what's going on outside anymore. So you're so focused on your inner world and what you're creating and what you're supposed to do next. And every step gets lit up along the way. It's very much like the Wizard of Oz. Every step she took, she got a little bit farther, but she didn't know what to do in the first step. And that's really how it works. You don't get the next thing. One, you're clearing a lot of programming just taking that step. So technically, it wasn't really visible before. That's why you couldn't see it. You had too much stuff in the way. But as soon as you took that first step, then you see the next step, and then you see the next step, and then you see the next step. Because if you got all the 155,000 steps it might take you to get there, it would just feel so massive. Your human mind, your human programming would get so bogged down on that, it would feel too much. That's why the process does take time. And when I said earlier, yeah, some people are more connected than others. Some people come in a little more connected than others. Some younger people never really, they kind of always stay in that connection. And they have more consciousness than, so you'll always meet people that feel a little more connected than others. Whether they are in a full-on awakening, a full ascension, it doesn't really matter. It's just some people just feel a little more in tune than other people, because that was just the role they were playing. And completely shut down as some of us were. You're also going to start noticing cycles in years. So there's big 7 to 10 year cycles. There's 3-year cycles. A lot of people you'll find will cycle in and out of your life over 3 years. You'll see massive changes in relationships every 3 years, because that's how long it takes to kind of complete a cycle with a person. And then you might see a 3-year gap, and then that person might come back around again for 3 years. Or you might meet a person and then 3 years later they show back up again, but you really didn't know them or have a big reality with them. You just might have met them for 10 minutes and then 3 years later they're back again. Some of that is we have to build up our reality and our template, and then they come back in. I have said, and I do feel very strongly, it's always easier to start over with a new person than to try to bring the people that we have had realities with before through to a new reality, if they're not ready for that reality, one of the toughest things for a human is to let them go. Understanding they're not energetically aligned and letting them go, it is one of the toughest things we have to do. It is not an easy thing to do because we have so much story around it. We fill in so much story that there's no one else that's going to be in the reality. They were the one that had to be in the reality with us. They were the ones that got us to this reality, no matter how they supported us along the way. And they got us here, and now we're here, and now they can't be here. And we have all these stories and tentacles and obligation and all this stuff around it that makes it feel icky. And once the whole thing starts to feel icky, you really don't want to go back into it again. And all of us have been in anything vibrationally when we knew it was vibrationally done. And we talked about this before, where sometimes energetically we're done, physical reality is still there, or the physical reality closes out, but energetically we're not done yet. And the energetic part of clearing that reality can take another couple of years, even though the physical reality with this person could have closed out years ago, because we weren't energetically done yet. So there are lots of different things that play into it. There's a lot of different parts and pieces to what we do and why we do that. And when you start getting into ascending your consciousness, you start getting into more awareness, you start to see how it starts to fit together, but we don't see the whole thing right away. There's a fail-safe in that. There's a reason for that. You don't want to be remembered on how some of the things we've all done, because it was going to kind of scare you back into your box where you don't want to do it. You don't want to do it again. You don't want to do it all up again. A lot of people will dream about Atlantis and dream about the corruption and dream about different aspects of yourself that are doing very corrupt things. And you can see these parts of you and these aspects of you. You're like, wow, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe. And you can also play back to different times in your human life when you embody those aspects. Perhaps not to those extremes, but you could see where it came through, where you had to pull on certain aspects to play out different roles in different realities. Every role we played, even in this existence here, if we just discount all the other ones, which we really should never do, but for this week, for this conversation, we're going to for a minute. You played out some probably pretty shitty roles in realities. A lot of times we chalk that up to, oh, I was young, or oh, I didn't know any better, or we have a story as to why we did it. We did it because that was the role we were supposed to play. That was it. And the same thing's true for all the other aspects we've ever been, all the other realities we've ever been in, all the other corrupt things we've ever done. That was the role we were supposed to play. That was how it was supposed to end. No matter how many times they rebooted. And Atlantis, it just didn't sink once. Atlantis sunk many times. We had many shots of that reality. And every time we destroyed it. Every time we destroyed it, power corrupted. Those aspects of us was corrupted by power, and we destroyed it every time. Every time, every time, every time. And that is ingrained somewhere in our body that we don't want to go there. And we have to work through that programming. That no, we do want to go there, that we can trust ourselves, that we won't do it again. But for a while it does block us. That's why it comes so slow over time. So I'm going to open up my chat and see if I have anything. I have not watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I kind of want to see that. I kind of do want to see that. I haven't seen that. I don't know if the person that wrote that comment is still here. I know it talks a little bit about multidimensionality. I think she projects her consciousness into different aspects of herself, which is what we do when we're sleeping. We do the same thing. You can get to a point in your waking state where you can project your consciousness into different aspects of yourself, different realities. You can get more in. Sometimes we're there, but we're not participating fully, and you can get into lucid dreaming where you are in an aspect are participating fully, trying to find out more information about what's going on in this reality. Anyone who's really into lucid dreaming or has gotten into lucid dreaming, you're going to notice that quite a bit, that it is kind of a fun thing to do. I had an experience with that maybe a week ago. I don't know time, but it was about a week ago. I don't lucid dream all the time. I never was a super powerful lucid dreamer, but I do it sometimes. Usually I'm just there witnessing it in a sense, or being in the reality, but I'm not asking questions, but 100% lucid in it, which is 100%, how do I say that? 100% lucid in it. It's kind of a different way where you're interacting with it and asking questions and saying, oh, I'm moving here. I'm doing this. Oh, I see what I'm doing here. Where are we going? Where am I going now? Who is this person? A lot of times you're just experiencing. It's more of an experience in the dream world, and you're not actively asking questions, because that does kind of have your human mind bleeding over quite a bit. And you're asking sometimes more human questions about, hey, remember we broke up? And the other person's like, no, we never broke up. In this reality, we didn't break up, but oh, I'm sure we did, but no, we didn't. It's kind of funny when you start interacting from a different level of consciousness in these realities. And if you've never done lucid dreaming, you've never had any luck with lucid dreaming, a lot of people will have luck when they ask permission to wake up in the dream, or they set a marker for themselves. If they set a marker for themselves on something they know is not right, that'll wake them up. Like, I'm talking to someone who's dead. I'm talking to someone that's not in my reality. I'm seeing whatever it is for you. Markers will usually help. If you imagine a personification of death, what would that look like? I don't know. Explain your question. I don't know what I don't know if I probably think of death a little bit differently. To me, you just return to the unified field. So there's really no fear in death, because when you go through an expansion of consciousness, you're going through ego death anyway. You go through it again and again and again. And that's really what kills the body. The people who don't allow to ascend their consciousness organically, and they fight that process, that's why the body dies. Because the body almost has this spot. It can't hold on for so long without enough of the soul light in the body. So the body will die. And that's why people die. And one, they're done with their human experience, and they don't want to go on with their ascension journey. When you're talking about ego death, that's why people die. So when you go through an ascension of consciousness, sometimes you'll age up to your human death point, whatever you would look like. You might look like you're 80 years old because that was your human template, and then you start to de-age again. And then you're in your higher dimensional templates, your higher templates then. And it's different realities. They're not your human realities. A lot of times you'll see your whole human reality play out. And is the mind consciousness, the soul, the same thing? When you talk about your human mind, that is not the same thing. You talk about your higher mind. You talk about consciousness and the higher mind. I would say they are the same thing. The soul, people sometimes call it a light body. It's just the body, your soul you're letting in. A lot of people will think that you just have one aspect, one higher aspect of yourself, when you have hundreds and thousands of higher aspects. You have higher soul aspects, you have an angel aspect, you have galactic aspects, you have all the galactic races aspects. It's not as simple as a higher self and a lower self. It's not as simple as a soul and a human. A lot of times I'll explain it like that because it's just easier when you're explaining. And it doesn't really matter if it's one of you or there's 100 of you, or 1,000 of you. It doesn't really matter in that sense. There's just lower aspects of you and higher aspects of you. And which one are you going to live from? If you live from your human aspect, you're going to have a very different experience when you live from your higher aspects. It's all going to be different. What kind of meditation do I do? I don't really meditate that much anymore. I used to when I was first coming through maybe 10 years ago. I don't do it too much anymore. I will normally, driving is a big one for me. A lot of times you're going to find your universe is going to put you in the situations where you can disconnect from the outer world. And for a lot of people, driving is one of them. Cleaning the house is another one. Sometimes anytime I'm doing anything physical, I can kind of be in a different realm and be thinking things through, connecting with different people through the field. A lot of people call it like telepathy. You'll just pick up messages. Notice when your human mind is kind of lazed away. Your brain is kind of lazed away and you're doing something, whether it be driving, you kind of get in a trance. House cleaning is another one people will do. If you're a meditator, a lot of people aren't meditators, right? They just are not able to sit there and meditate. I could do it if I put on a frequency to change my brainwave state. I could do it, but I never was one to meditate. And now I really don't do it at all. But I also don't require that connection. A lot of people meditate to hit that connection within themselves, and then they disconnect and go throughout their day. You start to be able to maintain that connection so you don't require to disconnect and meditate to get it back. You just connect all the time. You're just always connected. So for a while, that goes out the window. Are you able to turn off your senses and focus your mind? I never turn off. Well, once you gain access to your energetic field and you expand out enough to see the whole field, because everything floats around your field. You know, people who are sending messages energetically, they're in your field. I'm not going to call them a past life, but different multidimensional lives you're living. They're in your field. You just aren't expanding out big enough to see them. Specifically, just you as we're talking. We're just not expanding out enough to see them in different states of consciousness, in different brainwave state. You can't see them. I never turn off my senses to focus on anything. Some days sometimes I feel like I'm offline, and then I'll just do something a little more linear. Like I find I can't even walk in a straight line anymore. I always tend to zigzag now. Even when I'm walking around the block, I'm like, why do I zigzag? Because I don't really stay straight. And I just, now I notice I have to really kind of get off the path when anyone passes me, because I might run into them because I just don't stay straight anymore. I'm always kind of zigzagging along. But I'm also not 100%. I'm also 100% in the experience of the walk. So I'm not really concentrating on the other, but I don't turn it off. Now, I will say when I'm in a situation where I'm around a lot of people, normally when we walk into a space, the more conscious person has the strongest field. So then everyone's in your field and you're keeping the field spin going, but you're also in a way fighting against everybody else's field that's in a different experience, in a different frequency. So I will find if my body's working really hard to maintain my frequency and the frequency of the space I'm in, so I can stay there for longer periods of time, I don't have as much energy to be as connected because my energy is going to another place. So that's what happens when we're in our human programming. We have so much of our energy is going to, I don't want to say useless endeavors, because everything has a purpose in the higher dimensional realms. Everything, even as a human, you do has a purpose. Even if it's just to tire you out, so you open yourself up more. Everything has a purpose. We just have to kind of find the higher purpose in it. Have you tried closing your eyes and focusing on your breath? I haven't needed to. Sometimes if I'm in a big program clearing, I will, but I can maintain a connection without having to stop to get it back. Unless I'm clearing a program, I'm going through a rougher time with clearing something energetically, then sometimes I will. I will do something to just kind of close my eyes. Just closing your eyes does disconnect the mind. Some people get into the breath work. I never was super into the breath work. But when you close your eyes, you disconnect the human mind. So if you're ever in a place, and when I'm in that place and I can't see it, I can't see what my next highest line step is, and I'm kind of believing the program. I'm kind of believing what the outer world is saying, even though I know frequency-wise it's not true. And I'm tuning into a different frequency and a different reality. I will. So, okay. Do you believe in crystals? And if so, why? I was big into crystals years ago. They will bring you into different states of consciousness. They have a frequency that is higher than the human body when you start out. They can transmit, though, they cannot receive. So what you're going to find is the more you work with crystals, now some crystals have a higher vibration than others. The more you work with crystals, the more it's going to raise your body's vibration. But when you hit the vibration of that crystal, then the crystal doesn't feel like it works anymore. Now I work mostly with Andaras, which is what I'm wearing now. I have Andaras now, which is they're more like sacred glass, and they transmit and receive. So you can tell them what you want to work on, and they will assist in that. So they're a higher vibration than crystals. And sometimes I will go back to some crystals, like I will go back and work with some of the godheads or the crystal skulls. Sometimes I'll work with those for a while and then I'll gift them away. But crystals are a very important part of the process for a lot of people. It's kind of like Reiki's a key code. The word matrix is a key code for a lot of people to kind of open them up to higher dimensional realities. Crystals are too. So I always say go with what you feel attracted to, what you really, really like. Don't those things block energy? The only thing that blocks energy is ourselves. We're the ones that block everything. We are always the separation across space and time. We're why things take so long. It's always us. We procrastinate. We don't do what we know we're supposed to do. We wait. We don't take the bulls by the horn, in a sense. We don't get the balls and just do it. We just don't do that. That's not what humans do. Humans wait till the shit collapses and then humans get involved. That's just what humans do in general. Our human aspect is always going to go into self-preservation. That's what it was designed to do. That is its core program. That is its fail-safe. I'm going to do what I am programmed to do. That's what I'm supposed to do. So crystals will never block energy. They'll always open you up more. Now, what you might feel happen, especially if you work with clear quartz a lot, clear quartz will amplify. So let's say you're working through a lot of anxiety, you're clearing a lot of fear energy, you're just clearing that from the body. If you work with quartz, it's going to feel like it magnifies it and makes it worse, because it is, in a sense, but it's also clearing it quicker. So if you're going to work with clear quartz, just know it's intense. Rose quartz is a little bit gentler than that. I always like citrine. It also all these things will really enhance your dream state if you sleep with these crystals, put them under your pillow or whatever. All these things enhance your dream state, So I knew some people just carried crystals around all the time. I keep Andaras in my car. I put a couple Andaras in my car. I have, probably 30, 40 Andaras, probably 30 now. And I sleep with them in the bed with me at night, because it keeps everything at a very high vibration, so I can hit higher states of consciousness. I can see, because you're always going to be at a higher state when you're sleeping. It's just, you're not hampered by the physical body. You're always going to be at a higher state when you're sleeping. Now, eventually, everything kind of merges and flips together, and you can maintain a very high state when you're awake. But in the beginning, it's not like that. You have to connect first when you're sleeping. When you're dreaming, that's when you start to gain the access. So crystals were really big for me then. And a lot of people feel like it helps you clear energy, or it keeps it keeps negative energy away. Those are very human things to think. It's a human spin on it, but it's still a purpose for them having the crystal. So it's kind of like a story the human's telling them, but it's also a story for them to have the crystal to raise their vibrations. So it's kind of like the soul working around the human programming a little bit, in a sense, to kind of get you to have the crystal in the first place. Because if you don't have the crystal, you can't raise your vibration as quickly. It will quicken your ascension, your awakening. But I did find eventually, for me, they didn't hold the same energy anymore. Andaras. So when you're talking about Schwarzkopf crystals, Andaras are sacred glass. That they're not crystals, they're sacred glass, and they're found at different sacred sites around the world. So a lot of people have Andaras and they find that feel right, and other people have Andaras and the frequency feels really right. It kind of depends on where you are. A lot of people think Andaras, they're because they don't have a crystal name, they'll think they're a lot of bullshit and they don't work, right? I have found Andaras to be very more powerful than crystals. But because it falls into more of a sacred glass category, some people don't feel like they feel anything. I will also say, if your vibration is in a certain space, you're not going to feel an activation from the Andara. I mean, you are, but it's going to be a very unconscious thing. You're not going to really feel the bonding with it, because you're only going to be able to connect with anything with this as deep as you connected with yourself. If you haven't connected in with yourself and on a deep level, you're not going to be able to connect with anything else. That's why it gets tougher tougher for our human And it feels challenging when we're trying to connect with people once we ascend to certain spaces of our consciousness, because we're trying to connect with someone on a level we've connected with ourselves. But if they haven't had that connection with themselves, they can't connect with us on that level. You connect with the person on how deep you are within yourself. So that's why for a while we do go a lot of stuff by ourselves, because we're kind of not really looking for it, but we do kind of want to connect on that level, and we haven't been able to find that unless you find people who connect on that level within themselves. And for a while you don't find people like that for a reason, because you have to do it by yourself. Ascension is not a team sport. It's a team, but it's all your own team. It's all your higher aspects on your team. There's normally not a lot of other people around, because they can hamper the process, and we'll start to depend on them for knowledge and depend on them for help and assistance. And we can't do that after a while. After a while, we have to let that go. And we have to just do what we feel, right? What we feel we're supposed to do. It's not a team sport. It wasn't ever supposed to be. We want it to be. You know, we want to believe we're going to get there, and there's a lot of people there. Okay, have you ever tried, I might pronounce these wrong, some of these I don't know what they are. Are these crystals? Tourmaline, that rings a bell. The other one, BERLYSPINEL. I know, are those crystals too? CORUNDUM. Those I haven't heard of. Tourmaline sounds like a crystal to me, and I feel like I have heard of it. I don't think I've ever used it. Lapis is also, there's a higher crystal frequencies in the crystal realm. The other ones I haven't heard of. Tiger's Eye is another one a lot of people will do, especially for men. Men kind of like Tiger's Eye because it's darker. It has a more, okay, they're natural, semi-precious, and precious stones and crystals. I would say go with what you feel attracted to, because it's going to change. As your vibrations changes, what you're going to be drawn to is going to change. I used to have tons of crystals. I've gifted almost all of them away. I have kept a couple of the bigger pieces because I felt like they kind of grid the house a little bit. But I don't really play too much in crystals anymore. Some people go straight to Andaras and they don't do crystals. You know, some people kind of go the other way. I get all my Andaras now from Awakening to Remembering. And I do sell some of the ones I work with. So I have a few on my website that I have worked with that eventually I know are time to move on, and I'll sell those. But most of mine now all came from Kauai. And Awakening to Remembering is where I get mine from. I used to do Andara Awakening for a while. I got some from there. At the time I was in a certain place, they felt like a high vibration, but then they weren't. Alexandrite is pretty. What color is that one? Alexandrite. No, I might be saying that one wrong. Is pretty nice. I don't remember. It's funny how you don't remember. Rose quartz was a big one for me. Citrine, I love citrine because you also didn't have to clean citrine. And crystals also have to be charged, whereas Andaras don't. They're such a high vibration, they kind of self-charge. I mean, you can put them in the sun or put them in the moonlight, but you don't have to. Crystals have a little more maintenance upkeep than Andaras do. And I'll also wear a lot. I do them around my neck in a little cage. I have like probably 25 of these little small ones. So you always see me wearing different ones on here because it also activates other people around you. So when you wear crystals, it'll activate other ones around you. Okay, it comes in yellow, orange, or green. The green ones are nice. Oh, I like the green. You know, the green is also a heart chakra opening. Pink and green are kind of the two colors you see with that. Green, I always kind of like the green tones and purples. And I think citrine's normally, I think citrine only came in yellow. I can't remember too many others. Like I said, the men kind of like Tiger's Eye just because it looks a little more masculine to them. So yeah, I had a boyfriend once years and years ago, and I remember I gave him a Tiger's Eye like thing, and he really did like that, and he would wear it, which is a lot. Some of the other ones, the pinks and the purples, a lot of times the people, men that are really in their masculine energy, even though we all are masculine, feminine, and then we move from then we move into divine feminine and divine masculine energy, which they're not the same. You know, divine masculine is not masculine and feminine is not divine feminine. They're different energies. It's kind of like a pure aspect of those other energies, and we all carry both. You know, you'll see, there'll be different. Oh, I did like yeah, I had malachite. I had someone bring me back a malachite necklace from Africa years ago. I think I gifted that necklace, but I really liked malachite. Really liked that one a lot. Malachite it's pretty powerful if I remember malachite. I had different versions of malachite along the way. Different necklaces of malachite, but I did like malachite. Yeah, that's a good one. Malachite's a good one. I don't know if I ever dreamed with malachite, but I would wear a lot of malachite. But I did like that one. That was a good one. Can't think of any others. It's been so long. Amethyst is always a good one for dreaming. It's a pretty good for dreaming. I think lately I had a big crystal skull, which was amethyst and lapis for like the third eye and the eyes. I gifted that away. When you get into the crystal skulls, you get into Godhead. You start activating all the energy of all the Godheads, and all that ancient knowledge comes through. So there are different ones that are gonna. Tiger's Eye to me always felt a little to me, just the colors in it, because a lot of Egyptian, I always think of the golds or the browns or the blacks when I think of Egyptian energy. Apatite. I didn't want to think is a nice bluish green. I want to think I had that one too for a while. I would just go to the crystal store years ago and just pick out different ones. I'd change them out. And usually you'll find crystals kind of go away. You'll lose them. And you might find them again randomly. I also did, what is that? Amber. I really used to like amber. I had a lot of amber bracelets, and they would break and have to go get a new one, or they just disappear. Crystals will kind of go away for a while. They'll hide on you and you won't find them. Because sometimes they're meant to go to other people for a while. They like to kind of move around. Crystals do have their own consciousness. They just can't receive. They're just one-way transmitters. That's the biggest difference between Andaras and crystals. And Andaras are a higher vibration, but the biggest difference is that the crystals just transmit. They can't receive. You're going to find you're going to just move in and out of a lot of different ones as you increase your consciousness and you start matching the frequency of that crystal. You'll find that it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't hold the same weight anymore. You know, it'll just feel like a rock after a while. And then you move on to a different one. Or maybe you don't move on to any of them anymore. Sometimes we get kind of really attached to them. We feel like we have to have them. And that's kind of another distortion of working through that. Or you want to keep them. And then we have to start gifting them away. Because we don't want to get attached to them or feel like we need them, to do what we need to do. But they are amazing resources to assist us as we go through our process. They really are. So, okay, I guess we've gone for almost an hour. I guess we have gone for an hour. So, any more questions? And if not, I think we'll end it for today. If you have a question, anything we talked about, because we did cover a lot of stuff today. And it is a absolutely beautiful day here. Very sunny. I might go out and sun charge. You are going to find you sun charge more. When you're in your human body, you put on a lot of sunscreen because your body can't take the sun. And after a while, you don't put on any of that stuff anymore. You don't put on any sunscreen at all. Sleep paralysis. Have I ever had sleep paralysis after a lucid dream? I think at some points you feel like you kind of have, it can happen in different ways where you feel like you kind of get squished back into your body very quickly. It's like we're just going to do the one soul right now. Like you get squished, your soul gets squished back into the body. I had a friend who would say she would go to sleep at night and she would feel her soul come out of her body and just flip around above her. Or she knew her soul was like flipping around above her human body and then it would go back in. And that's what her soul would do every night, would just go out and do flips above her. I would either have a sense where I got pushed back in really quickly. Like it was just like whoosh, and then you feel like, oh my God, you feel squished, because you were so expanded and then you have to squish back into the body. And that's what happens when you expand out and you get kind of that, you get shrink back down, you get squished back in, and then you have to clear everything that's the frequency you have to clear everything that's not the frequency you just embodied or you're trying to embody. That's what embodiment is, and that's why it can take years to embody some of these frequencies, because anything that's not that frequency in your body, any program you're running that's not that frequency has to get clear. I have had times where I had this like a couple weeks ago where I kept thinking I was waking up and I wasn't. Like I'd wake up and walk around and then I realized I wasn't, and I would I went through like 6 times I think where I'm like, wait, am I finally awake? You have this thing, or you woke up and you start doing something and you realize, oh wait, I didn't wake up yet. I haven't left the bed yet. And then you keep going through the same process. Or where you feel like you cannot wake up and you're struggling to wake up. I don't know if I call it sleep paralysis. I mean, that's probably what a human doctor would call it. You know, where you feel like you can't move, you can't wake up. To me, it's just more of I'm trying to rush a process that's not done yet. My body's trying to come out of something, but my consciousness isn't fully there yet to do it. Have you heard that we are more vulnerable when dreaming than we think, and that lucid dreaming comes with a little bit of danger? I have never really heard of that. I think some of that is your human is more vulnerable to danger in a sense. I mean, if you want to put it like that, because you're expanding your consciousness out to all your different dimensional aspects. It's danger for the human. Knows at that point it's endangered. It's going to go. That's why we do ascension. That's why we do increase our consciousness. So we don't, I mean, our human's always going to be there, but instead of it making 99.9% of our decisions, it makes none anymore. It's still there. I'll hear my ego and my human come up from time to time, and it'll start bitching about something. And sometimes I'll let it bitch, and sometimes I might listen to it. And I'm like, what am I doing? Stop talking to me. I'm not listening to you anymore. Everything you say is bullshit. I cannot do it anymore. And sometimes you just say to your human too, your ego, hey, I got this. I know you're just trying to protect me, but I got this. Don't worry about it. So a lot of that is, you know, human consciousness is always going to put a spin on anything to expand your consciousness. Just like they'll say 90% of your DNA is junk DNA. 90% of your DNA is higher consciousness DNA. But because it doesn't serve a human purpose, scientists will say, oh, it's not important. It's more important than the other DNA that you have. It's more important than your human DNA. It's just like people say channeling is dangerous. Oh, channeling, you only can channel yourself. When you're dreaming, you're only connecting with yourself. You're connecting with your field. There's nothing else out there but you. You are the biggest thing in the universe. Whether you choose to believe it or not, we are the biggest thing in our universe. All it is us. Every hand behind the curtain, every whisper we hear in the night, it is all us. Different aspects of us trying to get our attention. Any dream that repeats, it's just to get our attention. So is it dangerous for the human? Well, it means eventually the human consciousness is going to get whittled away over time, because it's not our purest aspect. It's our most distorted aspect. Now, but when you get into your higher aspects, when you get into your Christed aspect, there's still a distortion to that, because there's a savior energy to that. We want to try to save everybody, right? Have you ever set a trigger in your dream so that you can move into a lucid dream? I would work with triggers when I first started trying to lucid dream. Sometimes I would do it unintentionally. I still kind of do it now more unintentionally, but you can set triggers. I would set different triggers. I would usually do, sometimes it could be like, okay, if I see an American flag in the dream, I know I'm in a dream, I'm going to wake myself up in the dream. It can be anything you want to set as a trigger. But I'll have the same triggers in my waking life too. If I'm looking for an answer to something, or sometimes I'll ask for an answer in my sleep state and I won't get it, but I'll get it the next day in my waking state, because it's a continuation. Your dream state and your sleep state, they're just a continuation. People think it's one thing or the other. No, I mean, I wake up from my sleep state and I might have asked a question and I cleared a lot of energy. I cleared a lot of distortions in my sleep, which is what we do in our sleep too. We clear a lot of our programming. So I could see the answer in my waking state. A lot of people would say, oh, you didn't get it in your dream state. No, but I cleared enough to see it in my waking state. I got my answer. That's why you always want to be open to both states. In the beginning, more things come in your dream. You can set any trigger you want. I want to think American flag was big. Also, if anyone in the dream was not someone in my current reality, like an old boyfriend I'd broken up with, and they're in my dream and we're together, that flagged me I was not in my reality. So even if you start calling it a different reality, and even you don't have to call it a dream. You know, if I'm in a different reality, something's going to flag me that something's off. A bouncing red. I've never used a bouncing red ball. A famous one for who? Who made that famous? I'm just curious. I've never heard that one. You can use a bouncing red ball. You can use if someone's dead in this and they're talking to you in the dream state. That's a clue. Time moving backwards, different. If you look at a calendar, it's off because time moves differently in different realms. So that's why it's harder. That's why we forget dreams. They're different frequencies. If we don't hold the frequency of that dream in our waking state, we can't remember it. That's why that is not in our reality right now, because it's a different frequency. You hit the frequency, that dream becomes a reality. Oh, you read it somewhere. Yeah, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of a red ball. Maybe because the color red's supposed to be a warning. You can set it for whatever you want to set it for. Play around with it. Whatever trigger, you'll know what your signs are because you'll have similar signs in your waking state. You can set a sign for anything because it's your reality. It's the dream state's just you have more access in the beginning to different things because your brainwave state shifts when you sleep. That's all. And you're not as hampered by the human programming when you're sleeping. But when you're really in your human consciousness, you don't have the access you do until you start to raise your consciousness. Humans still, even when you're in your human consciousness, you're still going to see that much until you start expanding out. So if I know someone's deep in their human consciousness, I know they don't have as much access when they're sleeping as I would if I'm in a higher state than they are. You're just going to have more access. The higher you go. The higher you go in one state, the higher you are in every state. You can use any one you want to. Sometimes for me, like I said, you can look at clocks, calendars, anything that moves wonky can be a trigger for you that something's not right. This is off. This is not my normal waking reality. This feels different. It's off here because all those things are going to act a little different. You can also look at what you're wearing. You know, that was also a big marker in a lot of dreams. People use those as markers as to when, if this is going to occur, when might it play out in my waking state? Am I wearing a coat? Is it winter? You know, what's going on? Now, I would say time is funny because you're just looking at different frequencies. So when your physical body hits the frequency of that dream, that's when that comes in. It's not really about a time. You know, there is no time, it's frequency. That's why normally when you dream something right before you wake up or right before you go to bed, you're in that hypnagogic state, that half in, half out. It's a very powerful psychic state because it's closer to your home frequency of your body, which means a lot of stuff you see there normally happens a little bit quicker because it's closer to your match. It's closer to your match. So normally if I see something in that state, I know it's coming faster just because I dreamed it right before I hit my whatever my now home frequency of my body is. It's not the consciousness you can achieve with your field. It's a consciousness and vibration of the body. The field just pulls the body up over time. And then that's why your body has to rest in a higher frequency to get a different reality. Have you heard that lucid dreaming is not recommended for people with certain mental conditions like psychosis? No. I think it's a human, I have to be careful how I say it. Human consciousness is going to say one thing, and our inner intelligence is going to tell us something else. Dreaming is your most powerful ally you have to be able to see what's coming for you. And the different things you have access to. Different realities you could bring in. Different realities you can clear in your sleep state and you don't have to experience them. If you're really upset about something or worried about something, clear that reality in your dream state. And then when you have to do that reality in your waking state, you're going to find it's going to be a lot easier. There's nothing scary there. It's just not understood because people try to understand it with the human brain. And it's not about the human brain. The human brain is for one thing, that's to keep the body functioning. That's it. It's not for decisions. If you're trying to make a decision from the human brain, you're looking in the wrong place because there's nothing there to make a decision by. It's a waste of time to make a decision from that space. And that's why we get into so much trouble because that's what we make decisions by, or we make decisions by the human construct of what's okay and what's not okay. There comes a time when you understand that in a human consciousness, is that true? Maybe. In higher consciousness, I know that's not true. because I can see through that consciousness. So what's true in one consciousness is not going to be true in another one. What techniques do you use? I don't know what any of those are. SSILD, external simulation. What do you mean by that? I don't know, like dream techniques? Are those dream techniques? I don't know. And I took like a year of dream study and none of those look familiar to me. So I don't know. I don't know what those are. The biggest thing I found about the dream state is just to ask what you want to do. You have to give yourself permission to open up to it. Crystals will help, and asking. Set your intention of what you want to do. Humans in the beginning, as our human self, we have to set an intention of what we want to do, what we want to clear, what we want to look at. It's important to do that. If you want to talk to someone that's past, they're just an aspect of you. They're just an aspect that's no longer in the physical here, but they are still an aspect of you. You still can connect with them. I get a lot of people that kind of want to do that. Or they've tried and they haven't been able to, but a lot of times people just aren't ready to open up to it. They have this fear of what they're going to see there. Okay. Wake back to bed, senses initiated lucid dreaming, external stimulation. I can't even say that word. Mnemonic induction of lucid dreams. I guess they're all techniques. A lot of times some people will use shamanic, I can't even say it, shamanic drumming to shift your brainwave state. You can try a dream entry, you can try a dream re-entry technique where you play a shamanic drumming if it works for you. They say 80% of the people it works for, 20% it doesn't. I don't know if that's really that true. Anything that shifts you, your consciousness, and go back into a dream, but you can do it in a semi-lucid state. You're not technically asleep. I have tried that, where you put on something to just sort of shift you and you know the dream you want to go back to. You feel like you're just trying, like if you were in a dream, you almost got to a door and you woke up, you always wake up right through the damn door and you want to go back and open the door. You can do dream re-entry techniques and play something that's going to shift you, set down, lay down, and go back to that space. Go back, hit that frequency and go through the door. So I have experience with that. It's just you're in more of a semi-conscious state and you're not asleep. You can also just ask to hit that space again before you go to sleep. It doesn't have to be so scientific. Our brain makes think that it's hard. You know, it doesn't have to be. You'll be surprised what you can do if you just give yourself permission to do it. It doesn't have to be more than that. You don't have to go through every scientific technique you've ever heard of to do it. Just ask to do it. Just ask to tap into this stuff. You'll find giving yourself permission to do it overrides a lot of the programming that says that you shouldn't do it or that you need all these other things to do it. You don't need all these other things to do it. Now, a lot of times we'll use them as techniques if these techniques help get people there. But you don't have to. You have to do what works for you. And what you're more, some people are going to be more, some people are going to want to go more toward maybe more of the scientific route to do it. Some people might be more drawn to more of a metaphysical route to do it. But it doesn't really matter the route you take. It more matters that you're just giving yourself permission to open up to do it. Anything you're reading, anything you're interested in, it's still an activation for you to do it. An activation for you to open up to it. It doesn't really matter what you use. It's what works for you. I know I can normally see a couple years ahead. Oh, hi from Florida. Hi from Virginia. You will also know that over time, you'll be able to see more and more ahead. Like I can usually see a couple years ahead, sometimes more than that. You'll gain more access to be able to see longer and being able to see farther ahead in what you would call linear time. But no, you're not bound by linear time. You're bound by how long it's going to take you to hit the frequency of that dream. But everyone has no one dreams the past. Everyone's always dreaming different frequencies higher than the one you're at. They're all potential futures in a sense. It's just not a time future, it's a frequency future. That's what That's why you can hit it when you're sleeping, because your frequency shifts and you can see more and you can do more. Just more access. Okay, if I have no more questions, I think we're gonna end for today. Have you heard of tolerance for ambiguity? Some dreamers interpret ambiguous dreams as positive or desirable. Researchers call this tolerance of ambiguity. People with a high tolerance for ambiguity are more likely to experience premonition dreams. We always dream premonition dreams. Your soul has no interest in anything of the past. Now, you might mark it as the past. Your human brain's it's kind of like when we talked about the sixth sense earlier, where we kind of fill in what we thought had happened by our brain. Your brain might want to mark it as that because it's something that looks old. It can look like a different time. It can look like different people that aren't there anymore. It's a marker. They're more of you have to look at them as an energetic marker and not a physical marker. And it's what the dream means to you. It's your feeling about the dream. It doesn't matter what a dream dictionary says, unless you feel like when you look at that, it resonates with you. Some people are going to dream about a snake and they're going to feeling terrible, and someone's going to dream about a snake and think it's the most amazing dream in the world, because for them, a snake represents something else. You're always dreaming forward. The issue that comes in is because there's can be such a latency to when it actually happens, you forget you dreamed it. It goes back into deja vu, or we've done everything you've ever done, you've already done it 100 times over. So there's really nothing new you ever do, which takes a lot of stress off from doing anything because you've already done it 100 times. You're always going to dream a different frequency, a higher frequency than your body sets at. Because if your body's set in that frequency, the dream would be playing out in your waking life. That's why we can't remember them. We wake up in a different frequency. We don't remember them. If you remember the dream, it means the frequency is very close to something playing out now. So when you get into anyone who wants to call it a past life, it's just a life going on simultaneously. That it's something, there's a similar energy frequency now that's causing you to remember that. But it's not about then, because it's technically happening now. It's the energy that's bleeding over. Okay, experts hypothesize we dream to process our memories and emotions. As a result, events that you experience during the day may stick with your subconscious. For example, you might dream of purchasing new furniture for your home. When you wake up, you see an advertisement for a couch you want to purchase. However, if you had been thinking about redecorating your home and researching furniture for a few days, your dream might simply reflect what was already coming up in your life. Well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did you dream and create that reality? We always have to tap into the knowledge that we create everything. And there are no experts. Anyone who tells you they're an expert on human consciousness. They're not an expert on your life or your dream life. No one's an expert on that than you. You are your own expert on that. They're going to look at what they believe from a human consciousness state on what they're doing. Now, will I say if you're in a human consciousness, you don't have the abilities as when you're operating from higher consciousness in your dream state? I do believe you don't. You are processing more of your daily stuff because you're all caught up in your daily stuff, but you're still forward looking. You're never back looking. Not even forward looking. You're up looking. Your frequency up looking. But could you say that you cleared all the blockages because you wanted a reality where you had new furniture, you cleared the blockages in your sleep, and the next day that reality opened up for you. Have you heard the story of the Aberfan landslide? I've never heard that story. I've not heard that story. Open up to the possibilities of what you can do in your dream state. And to do that, look what you can do now. Start writing your dreams down, date them, title them, give them a story, what you remember. Even if it's just a feeling, write it down. See how long it takes something of that frequency to occur. It might be exactly the same. It might be similar, but a different, a different setting, but the energetics are the same. And look how far ahead you can. In 1966, a landslide of waste from a coal mine slid into the southwest village of Aberfan. The local school was destroyed by the landslide, killing 144 students and teachers. A notable premonition was submitted by the parents of a 10-year-old girl killed in the accident. The day before the accident, the child reported to her mother in a frightening dream. She had dreamed that the school was no longer there and that it had been covered by something black. Yeah, she dreamed a different frequency. It came in really quick. And it happens all the time. A lot of people knew 9/11 was coming before it came. A lot of people it's more like you're connecting to the field. You know, you connect to the field of consciousness, the collective consciousness, that you can see a lot of this stuff. Tsunamis, people know. Abraham Lincoln dreamed his death. Repeatedly, he knew. He was also very open to supernatural. Abraham Lincoln would have his wife would have mediums in the White House because she wanted to connect with their children who had passed. They had a lot of children that had passed early, young. So she would bring mediums in. There was one medium that would come in and would always have a message for Lincoln. But it was really just an aspect of Lincoln in a sense. A higher aspect of him to tell him. And a lot of the things she would tell him was he couldn't wait. He had to pass the Emancipation Proclamation. He didn't have the time he thought he had. He had to push that through. And he had dreamed he was going to go. So many times he knew, you know, he had dreamed many times, but he was also open to it in both states. And I don't know if Robert Kennedy dreamed of, maybe he did dream of his death or other people did. Calpurnia dreamed of Julius Caesar's death repeatedly. I would also say in everyone's life, what a human would say is a traumatic event, you're going to have a warning to it. You're going to have, and I'm going to just say it's a human traumatic event, because every traumatic event happens for a reason, to push our soul forward, to push the collective forward. You see a mass shooting, it's to push the collective forward because that's what the collective needs. Because if it's one person gets shot, nobody cares about that. Yeah, I'm live. No one cares about that if one person gets shot, right? But if 15 kids get shot, all of a sudden everyone gets outraged. Everyone gets upset. So people always look at these things and go, why did it have to happen like that? It has to happen like that because that's what gets the attention of the human. That's what upsets them. One thing doesn't upset them. I'm not going to blink 3 times if I'm live. I guess you could ask for something worse. In March of 1968, Catherine Middleton reported her first premonition of the assassination of Robert Kennedy. She continued dreams of Kennedy's death for months. On June 4th, 1968, she called there was a premonition bureau 3 times, urgently concerned about Kennedy, who was shot just after midnight the next day on June 5th. Yeah, she could see the collective. Like I said, 9/11, a lot of people saw that coming. A lot of people saw COVID coming. As far as seeing mass deaths on the planet, a lot of people still see mass deaths on the planet. A massive purging of a lot of the population. There's a lot of people who've tapped into that for a long time. Now, how long will it take for some of this stuff to... have you heard the myth of Cassandra, the Trojan priestess of Apollo? Maybe. Tell me the story. I might know it. I don't know. Normally, anything in your human life that your human is going to see as a very traumatic event, you'll see it in the dream state first. So your body can start detaching from that. If it's a person, you'll start detaching from the person, a situation, a job. You'll start detaching the cords. That's why you dream it first. It's a kind thing because it gives you the opportunity to work through some of the grief when you're sleeping. That's when I say the sleep state's a great place to clear a lot of the programming we have, to clear a lot of the emotions we have, because it gives us the opportunity to let go of a lot of things. So when we get to these things in our waking state, it's not as harsh. It doesn't feel as rough. Also, you could talk about Harriet Tubman. She would dream, and she could dream what was in front of her, right? So she knew she knew the safest path on the Underground Railroad to get slaves through because she could see what was in front of her. So she would take naps along the way. And they anything you've ever seen about Harriet Tubman, you will see these kind of, they'll usually talk about, she would go into these sleep states, and that's what she would be able to do. She'd be able to go out and look. She would expand her consciousness out enough to see this way's not safe, this way is safe. And she'd be able to guide people through. Now, she got hit in the head when she was a child. And when that happened, it actually opened her mind up, her higher mind up, where she could tap into a lot of this power set where she could do that. Cassandra was given the gift of prophecy, but was also cured by the god Apollo so that her true prophecies would not be believed. Many versions of the myths related to that she incurred the god's wrath by refusing him his sexual favors after promising herself to him in exchange for the power of prophecy. She actually predicted the fall of Troy. You'll be surprised what you can predict. Sometimes for the collective, sometimes in your own world, that you'll always know it's coming. You'll never get surprised again because you'll always know it's coming. But the human's going to see it as rough. You know, you can go back, everything that is coming for humanity, that has happened for humanity, it was all seen ahead of time. A lot of times because the collectives won't move and they need that big traumatic movement to move forward. You know, because they're not shifting organically. They're not moving organically. So they need the timeline to collapse on them to push them forward. You saw the same thing with the Civil War. There was a lot of times that there was a lot of outs in that reality, but they were not taken. So it had to end the way it ended because the collectives were moving. And that's how the collectives move. The more out of the collectives, the weaker that first collective gets, and then the collective falls. And that's what's happening now. It's just happening at a rate that a lot of people think it's too slow, that humanity's headed for another big push because that's what humanity needs. Humanity needs a push, and they're always gonna, need the push. So, anything else we want to talk about, or is that cover it for today? I'm trying to think of any of my other dream stories of people, like the Beatles songs. A lot of them came in the dream state. The benzene ring was discovered in the dream state. Lucille Ball went to television because she was instructed by someone who had died. A friend who had died in a plane crash that she needed to go to TV. So there's so many things in history that are rooted in dreams. Yeah, most people do. Most people know it's coming. Because in a way, it's already happened before it even happens. The question becomes, what can you see? What do you want to see? You'll find a lot of it is blocked because we just don't want to know. Like if you could know the day of your human death, and that doesn't mean your physical body will die. It's just that would have been your last human moment, and then you can go on to ascending your consciousness still in this body on this planet. A lot of people think you ascend your consciousness, you have to leave the body and leave the planet. This doesn't really work that way. Would you want to know that? Or would you rather not know that? Everything there's a zillion different timelines for everybody. But most people know what's coming. And most people say when it happens, I knew it was coming. I knew it. Or I knew something was coming. Even if I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Because there are just these absolute moments in everybody's timeline. Certain things they're heading towards, because that's going to be the thing that's going to push them, their soul forward more, in a sense. Push their human forward into the next thing. And that's why it happens. It has to be that person. It has to be that situation, because that's what it was going to take for that person to move them into the next stage of their awakening process. That's why. Okay. Yeah, it was a very good chat. Thank you all for joining me. I had quite a few people pop in today. So, okay. I will see everybody next time. Bye.